Metroid is completely taking over, and you're probably wondering why. This game has been out since the 1980s, consistently on Nintendo forever. Like, what do you mean by it's taking over? Well, let's break some things down as to why it's taking over, the essence of it, the beauty of it, and everything that Metroid does in terms of its long legendary run. And it's been so much incredible, and just some hindsights about it. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond announcing, and with a beautiful trailer, I might add, it has gone through the roof, and a lot of people have been returning to these games. On Twitch, the viewership has gone up a lot more. I was running through some Super Metroid myself. Now, the thing is about Metroid is that it's massively popular, but it's somewhat still underrated in my opinion. I don't know why. I feel that they have some essence that delegates the audience some route Nintendo, but it's not something where it's above and beyond saturated. So Metroid is loved by us, especially by, you know, we're very, their community is very strong is all I can say. I guess for lack of a better term, the community is very strong within this consistent fan base, and from the 80s all the way. There's people that were alive in this time. I was a 90s kid, and so like when you think of the 80s, you're like, oh shit. Metroid Prime, I feel not a lot of people do talking of it to an extent, where people are barely introduced to Samus in Super Smash Brothers. And I think I am going to be making other videos on that, on why Smash is so great for that, to introduce these characters. But with Metroid Prime 4 being really introduced, it's crazy because Metroid is literally the name Metroid, which delegates a Metroidvania game. These games are very popular, especially Nintendo in the 90s with platformers. Metroidvania games are really popular, but I don't even think this was actually primarily the first Metroidvania game, which is weird that it has the name Metroid. It just commercialized the name Metroid so much more that we can offer, but again, still at the same time underrated. A lot of people don't really come across this series of games until they actually know from Super Smash Brothers and just know how amazing Samus is. Now, Samus is a cool character that's just beloved, kind of like the way like Lara Croft is in Tomb Raider. You know, it's just a very beloved, respectable hustler character, female of course, that is just, I don't know, it just dominates. They just have this aura to them that everybody really latches onto, and well deserved. The games are very much solid, and what Metroid does well is not, they dominate the Metroidvania due to them obviously having the name, but they also have 3D games, right? They had the Metroid Prime games, which is crazy, which is a FPS 3D aspect overall, and these games are by far their own. There's also Metroid spin-offs. So they've done everything in terms of treatment with Metroid the way they would do with like Mario and Sonic, and they have 3D variations, 2D variations, Metroidvania, you know, all types of progressions, and they have story. They actually have canon story. There's canon actual stories and timelines on how you can play these games that actually really much like all go together, mesh together, so you can understand everything. So there's tons of replayability in a lot of these games. I recently played Super Metroid and I was having a great time. This game was on Super Nintendo in the 90s, and although I beat this game, sometimes I'm still like, oh shit, how do I do this again? How do I do this? And it's so fun, and it's very underrated that they really grasp onto these types of audiences, but still don't really, I feel, get, you know, time. Now, Nintendo does have all of these in the store now, I think, except the Return of Samus, I think. But I think there is an AM2R version of it. Another fan just remade, basically, version of, I think, Metroid 2. I think y'all can correct me on that. But I do know there's a lot of variations to play this game on the Switch now, which is huge for people that really want to get into this. And Nintendo has been dominating with this in recent days, like having some Capcom collections, and just everything. Bundles really do help with new gamers and old gamers come together and just understand these series so you can have conversations like this. That's why I was so excited to record this video today, because I was like, damn, like, it's so cool to be playing Super Metroid in freaking 2024 when this game was made in the 90s. And that goes for a lot of other things. When you play Mario will always bring you back to like all the classics, to where, you know, although even before Super Mario Maker and those types of graphics and actual artwork of those games, which was from Super Mario World, and even before that, you're looking at Super Mario 3 and previously, and so that helps with Mario till this day, and that is beautiful. And Metroid does that so well, but I feel should be really thrown up there with mainstream all the time. And I know a lot of people that I would know especially previously when I would game with my friends back when the Super Smash Bros. Melee would come out. A lot of people didn't really know who Samus was or who Metroid was. I know they knew like Captain Falcon and stuff because F-Zero, but it was weird that they were never really introduced to the series or never really gave the series a chance until they played Super Smash Bros. At least OG or Melee, the GameCube or 64. And that's when they were like, oh shit, like let me go check this game out. And that's a beauty of Metroid Prime. So there's just so much what they're doing, especially with Metroid Prime 4 coming around. The longevity of this game is not talked about enough, and I feel that it was so cool to see a lot of viewers on Twitch really watching the classics, and that's what we've been covering in recent times. We've been doing a lot of classic research and things of how I can really revamp the channel so we can talk about classic games and also bring about like the newer fan base of these games that are still going on to this day. We had Metroid Prime 4, and this game was built in 1987. Well, not even built, it was actually published complete and everything in 1987. Like, that's mind-blowing if you think about that type of longevity for a series, a game, or someone who can possibly still be underrated when it comes to the heavy hitters, in my opinion, at least. Like what I said earlier, the Marios, the Sonics, etc., and therefore carrying the Metroidvania, which I don't think they were the first type of Metroidvania game, but they definitely carried the name of a Metroidvania game. That games like Prince of Persia still released a recent Metroidvania type game, and then also Metroid Dread was still recently released. Not recent, a few years back, but it's still there. Where even games to this day that have these points of views of the real old school echelon of gaming, Metroid was a huge prime time version. You like what I did there, huh? No pun? No douche. They were a huge essence to why these games, these platformer games really went just through the roof. To this day, I can't believe that platformers and all types of Metroidvania games are still really going hard to this day. So I do want to say that Metroid Prime 4, I am excited for. If you love FPS and story, they do have the Metroid Prime Remastered. I haven't even mentioned that either. They have Metroid Prime Remastered, and that game it looks beautiful, especially if you play it, you know, you're ready to go, you got it, you got maybe a nice monitor in docked mode. If you're just playing a handheld, it still looks beautiful because you're going to be condensed to a smaller screen anyway, depending on how you played Metroid Prime Remastered on your Switch. It is a beautiful game, and it's fun, and it's easily a game that can convince you. So in my opinion, if you haven't played, like, Nintendo has a vast option of the Metroid series now that you can play online. They have the OGs, and they also have a lot of stuff in the libraries that you can do, like physical copies. There's no better time to jump into Metroid, especially preparing you for Metroid 4. And what I said earlier, what they do well is that they help you invest. So when there's a canon series, that's always beautiful. You never want to play a lengthy amount of games that don't really make sense at times. So Metroid does that very beautiful. Again, they do have the timeline on this of where you can play, what games you can play in order. And it'll cause you to do multitudes of research and see the backgrounds of everything. Therefore, I feel Metroid, the series in totality, is taking over now. And it's so incredible that they've been taking over since way back then. And it really brings a lot of audiences all together to really help us enjoy this game. Just everything you do in the 2D aspect of it, the Metroidvania sides of Metroid, is so fun. You know, all of the things you can grasp onto, you know, you got to think about all the OG type Super Nintendo games that were just straight 2D platformers running back and forth. There's a lot of things to grasp onto, items and skills and what you do and inherit from Super Metroid or OG Metroid all the way through to Metroid Dread. And then the music is phenomenal. I know a lot of people didn't really like the Metroid Dread music, but Super Metroid music is phenomenal. And the Smash Brothers remakes to the Brinstar and everything, those are phenomenal music. And that's the way it really does sound. The boss fights are always fun. They can be very challenging games too, so that's actually a great thing, right? Some of the more challenging classic games, in my opinion. Oh, I didn't even mention, like, Mega Man also is a head honcho type series where I think Metroid and Mega Man kind of are that type of level of hype. And then you have, of course, like Mario and Sonic, which is always on their own levels. So yeah, I think it's challenging enough. It's always fun, great exploration, Metroidvania, and then you get into the 3D. So you get two different types of games and attributes that are actually successful. I feel that when you get games that can dominate both essences of being superiorly classic and helping out OG audiences and helping out this new generation of audiences while giving back to OG, while meshing and blending it all together and giving us FPS versions and 3D versions and variants, and then you have the 2Ds, it's just wild. Metroid does just that, and they are taking over thanks to Metroid Prime 4. And also, just people are gonna dive into it, especially when there's another Switch console announced, and then especially when another Smash Brothers is announced, because it's been a while for Smash Bros now. So it's just you're gonna see even a lot more. Samus really taking over, and I'm excited for it. Y'all let me know y'all's opinion though. Metroid is dope. Peace.